What's up, DAW Nation? My name is Wyatt Troy, and I want to welcome you to episode 50.5 of Behind the DAW, where we usually interview music producers, artists, music industry experts, singers, songwriters, sound designers, basically everyone else in between, on an emotional, philosophical, artistic, and music business basis. But, as you notice, this is a 0.5 episode. That means we take the audio from our YouTube series in the DAW, and we put it into podcast form, so that you can partake of it on the go and get that perfect combination of emotional and technical knowledge. Now, you can watch this episode. You don't have to listen to it. You can watch it. All you have to do is go to YouTube and type in the DAW multiplier. All of the episodes will come up. You can see our entire catalog. We've had people like Kashmir, AU5, Said the Sky, Quicks, Grabbits, Mode Step, a whole bunch of others. Like the list keeps growing. It's absolutely ridiculous. So make sure to go check that out. Or you can just search all the episodes in our catalog on this podcast for the 0.5 episodes, and you can just listen to them. Whatever you want. Totally cool with it. But nonetheless, in this episode, we have Delta Heavy, and they're going to be breaking down their new song, Take Me Home. So what are you going to learn in this episode? You're going to learn about how to process female vocals. You're going to learn the difference in producing headphones versus producing in monitors. We're going to talk about working on music remotely and collaborating through Zoom, which is, by the way, how we record all of our episodes for In the DAW and Behind the DAW. We're going to talk about how you can collaborate with anyone in the world in real time through Zoom. It's absolutely incredible. And we're going to talk about layering vocals with vocoding. And of course, we're going to talk about a lot more, but those are some of the things that are absolutely beautiful. So we actually don't have a sponsor for today, so we're just going to go right into it. So DAW Nation, I really hope you enjoy this episode. And if you do, I got a new call to action for you. If you do like this episode, please share it with someone. Also, if you want to write a review on iTunes, if you love listening to the podcast on iTunes, that would be amazing. But otherwise, wherever you're at, whether you're on Spotify or SoundCloud or iTunes or YouTube or wherever, go ahead and share this episode with someone that you really care about, that you feel like really need this episode. That's my call to action for you this week, DAW Nation. So with all that said, with all that out of the way, let's get into this week's interview.
I'm curious, what's your guys' favourite bit of the track, or do you not really have a favourite bit?
It would be probably the vocal and the way the vocal reacts and sits with this kind of vocoded vocal we also have. That's my favourite aspect of the track, really.
Yeah, it's mine too. That's kind of like the magic of the track that we started with. That was the seed that kind of spawned the rest of it.
The basis. It was the basis of the idea. That actually came before everything else. The top line and the vocoder.
So you had the vocal, then you created a vocoded layer. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So like we using Waves Morphoder. I got it from the idea from Hide and Seek by Imogen Heap. When that song, she runs it through like a vocoder, and it's just it's a beautiful song. And so I just wanted to sort of do a track like that. And once we wrote the top line, put it through that, and then we wrote the rest of the track just around that kind of idea and concept.
And did you just vocode it to the chords of that you just have written for the song?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was just the simple chord structure that the music kind of follows as it comes in behind it. It kind of sounds quite natural, like it is sort of like harmonies of voices. It's quite crazy how it's not.
What made you use that vocoder? Because certainly in Ableton, most Ableton people tend to use the built-in one. So does Logic have a built-in vocoder or anything?
I don't know. I think it might do. Why did you use vocoder?
I just knew. I think it was the first one I just tried. Like I've looked around for some other things in the past, and they've never quite just sort of worked out how I wanted them to. And then when I just tried Morphoder first, and it was just, I don't know, it was perfect for the job. So it's more by accident than anything else, really.
Yeah, I've always been meaning to look into plug-in vocoders, but haven't quite got around to it yet.
Logic kind of has one, but it's not as in-depth.
I think for the specific job as well, it's like if you're going for the sort of like more like Daft Punk or the sort of the old R&B type of vocoder, it's there's different types of ones that are going to be good for it, whereas this is sort of a bit more just like a paddy layer, and the Morphoder is definitely really good for that.
What was the hardest part of the track? You're just like, you dreaded about this track. What was the hardest part?
We didn't have too many problems with this mix down.
I always set Ben the challenge of mixing down as many possible layers and elements as I can throw at him. So there's quite a lot of stuff in there. Like what you can see in the project is sort of the final version. So there's going to be lots of like groups.
It's quite condensed. This is probably, there's 71 tracks, and that's probably down from probably 170, something like that. The lead is like 6 different layers, which has been bounced into one part. I guess the most difficult thing with this track was the vocal processing. The verse and choruses are sung very differently and in different voices. Jam's got quite a high-pitched...
It's got like a rasp.
She's got a kind of rasp, and there's a lot of high end brightness in her voice, which you want to keep, but it's about taming that. And for me, the vocal processing and a lot of different stages of processing, that took the most amount of time. I actually did it in a separate project just to process the vocals. So very careful subtractive EQing, and then just, different stages of compression and warmth and all that good stuff. But it's kind of always, when I work with her voice, it's about taming the top end without sounding, losing the breathiness or making it sound dull. So that was the challenge in this track.
Do you still have your vocal processing chain on here? Or is it bounced out at this point?
It's bounced. It's gone through. I mean, there's a bus. There's some stuff on it. It's kind of final stuff. There's a few things, but yeah, this has gone through so many different things.
And you generally mix your vocal with the track in mind, or do you just get the vocal sounding as good as possible by itself?
I will start with some basic processing, the basics like, EQ, dynamics, and like a reverb, a couple of reverbs, like a room and a longer one, like a plate. And with that in place, we'll get the vocal in the track, and then we'll work more on the kind of style of it. I'll do a few things, so I'll kind of listen and give his feedback, and then we'll kind of tweak that in terms of doing more like, like more effectsy, modulation kind of stuff. That will depend on the track and where it is in the track, and we'll have, different treatments. The chorus will have different treatments to the verse. Ad-libs and backing vocals will be treated differently.
I think as the mix develops as well, you find that you need to sort of continue treating it so that it works with the mix at whatever stage the rest of the music's at.
I've got a couple of the chains that the vocal went through. Oh, cool. It would have been something similar.
What's that Neve one? Is that dynamics? Yeah.
So yeah, we've got because I think these vocals were recorded just Neumann U87 straight into the UAD, so it didn't go through a nice preamp or anything. Just the Neve preamp, just doing a bit of gain. Sounds nice. So we Culture Vulture on a very clean setting. I used to own. It did have a preamp emulation, I think, on the way in. Culture Vulture on a very clean setting. I used to own the hardware of this, but I sold all my hardware when I moved to LA, and I miss having it, but I don't actually miss using it because software is a lot easier. And you know what, in dance music, the 5% difference you're getting with hardware, in the end, you're not really going to notice. I'd like to get some hardware again, but you definitely don't need it. Adding it, just a bit of tube warmth and drive, very subtle, and then just initial very basic EQ, a couple of dips in high end and rolling off the lows. Then a bit of OTT, which I wouldn't usually put on a vocal, but for some reason I did here. I don't usually use OTT on vocals, but I was obviously doing at some point. Lexicon reverb. I think this is just doing a room setting. And then CLA, I don't know what, one of a kind of a preset edit. It's not really doing much. It's just doing a bit of stereo width. I may have taken that off. I may have gone back and taken that off. And then it's weird, like this, I must have done some more compression on a different stage. So I've got another chain. So that would be bounced down, another set of processing, just like a VCA compressor, quite fast setting, just kind of smoothing out a few quick transients, more EQ, just a bit of low mid, shelving down, a limiter, probably just removing a few peaks. I like to have my dynamics very controlled in vocals, but just doing a lot of small bits of compression and limiting, and never really hitting anything too hard with one thing, generally.
When you do that and you put it's the first compressor that you put on a vocal, what kind of dB reduction are you looking for? Like how many dBs of reduction are you looking for? You know what?
There's not really, I wouldn't say more than like 10 ever on one compressor. There's not really a rule because everyone's voice is so different. A verse is going to be sung softer more quite often than a chorus. And so, I will have different compressor settings on a verse and choruses, and I might even automate the threshold of the compressor for certain parts. I've just got some dynamic EQ on the upper mid range because her voice tends to get a little piercing around like 4 or 5K. I don't know why it's not on this chain. I like the 1176. Obviously, it's like a classic. It's like an industry standard vocal compressor.
The vocals in the final product of this episode, the vocals that are coming from me right now, is processed through an 1176.
And were you working with the raw vocals, or did they send them to you slightly processed?
We recorded this.
Yeah, this was all done in the studio together.
So basically, the process would be, I think Sai recorded the vocals with Jem that day because I was not in London at that time. The way we work, Sai, we got the recordings, and then I think Sai did all the kind of comps, the takes together, and did fix any like tuning issues or anything, and then he kind of sent them over to me, and then I started working on the processing.
Yeah, what we normally do is, I because Ben lives in LA and I live in London, we sort of, we separate out, and I do a lot of the vocal writing with the writers and the vocalists. So I'll do some recording, comp everything together, and then just as a quick vibe setter, use like Isotope Nectar 2, just to kind of like put it in a place where you can kind of feel the vibe. And sometimes we'll go a bit further, and sometimes it, Ben continues from an already developed point of production, and sometimes you go all the way back and just start again. It really depends.
Yeah, sometimes I'll like throw on like an Isotope Nectar with just one of the presets we've edited, which will have some EQ, compression, chorus, delay. And sometimes it just sounds good, so I'll leave it on there. Other times I'll like recreate it with different plugins, what it's doing. It all depends. Like generally, if it sounds good, it's like, if it sounds good, I'm not going to go back and take it off and create more work, because if it sounds good, it's good. So,
and also if you've achieved sort of a certain sound or vibe, it's very hard to recreate that exactly. So
yeah. So in terms of dynamics, what I've been doing recently, I like two compressors generally. One, like 1176. This is like, it's very much the attack all the way to the left, the release all the way to the right, because it's actually, which is slowest attack, fastest release. It's the other way around on this model. So I'll do like maybe up to 10 dBs on this, like either 4:8 ratio. So I really like the 1176. I would love to have a hardware like a vintage Blue Stripe, and then I like a slower compressor after that. Really meter belly moving. I like the UAD Fairchild, like a slower, like tubey thing, maybe like an LA2A, or I like the Fairchild because it just sounds big and warm. But my favorite new vocal compressor, I started using on absolutely everything, that I'm obsessed with. It's the best vocal compressor they've made in a plugin. It's this Greg Wells, who's a very famous, well-known mix engineer and producer. He got one of his, it's like an old 60s Altec tube compressor, and the Acoustica guys modeled it, and it's El Rey. It's called El Rey, and for me, this is the best vocal compressor I've ever heard in software. It sounds like very expensive. I owned like a Thermionic Culture Phoenix, and it sounds to me like it's got that sound. It's got kind of 3D sound. It's really warm, and it's like you put it's like magic to me. You just put it on with no gain reduction, and it just makes everything sound better. It's amazing on vocals. So I've been using it. This is all over the album, all over the vocal tracks. So yeah, it's my favorite plugin at the moment. My final vocal bus, which all the kind of the main vocals go through, it's got it on there. I don't think there's any compression going on. It's just running through, just to give that a little bit of just very subtle. It's just a little bit of warmth, and it makes everything feel kind of 3D. It's that thing that hardware, like really nice tube equipment does. It gives the sounds this like 3D feel. It's hard to describe, but it makes it's a nice subtle difference. And then I've got this Soothe plugin, Ook Sound. I only got recently, but we've been using it on everything. It's like a very clever dynamic EQ, de-esser kind of thing, and it's just so nice. It gets
rid of all the resonant frequencies, right? Isn't that like what it's...
It targets resonant frequencies, exactly, yeah. I use it on absolutely everything. We both use it all the time. Best plugins I've got.
Do you guys ever disagree about sort of what to do to a vocal? Like, does one person prefer one set of settings and another set? Or?
I don't, generally not. I think sometimes it's never a disagreement. It's more like opinion, and it's like so it will be like something, I'm hearing something I don't quite, I'm not quite liking something, and it's generally it will be like the type of reverb tail is a bit long or something like that, or we don't disagree. It's like what do you think about the vocal? Do you think we need some delay or something? And maybe so I'll try to put some stuff on it and I'll tweak it. I can't ever remember a time we actually like disagreed about.
I think we've had an argument about
a vocal. I mean, disagree about plenty of other things in the production process, but generally, no, never.
I think we kind of, from early on, we've just had this sort of opinion that we both have to like stuff for it to sort of get through. Otherwise, it's obviously there's something lacking. So, one of us isn't feeling it, then the other one, I think, just by default, is like, okay, that's fair enough, because you're hearing something that's not right. So we've got to address it. I mean, that's it.
I just think in terms of vocals, we're never doing anything to it that's that extreme, because unless you're going for something crazy distorted that we've never really done, or something stylistically, you're generally just trying to make it, just present the voice as as naturally as possible. And stuff like EQ and dynamics, it's more about getting it to fit in with the rest of the music and sit nicely with the track. I mean, ideally, if you've recorded a vocal well, you shouldn't have to do too much to it.
The next natural step in my mind is kind of like just the overall mix in general. Talk to me about like what were some of the mixing strategies that you guys did that you implemented in this song?
We basically have everything. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff bounced out. I mean, kicks and snares, there would have been several layers. It enables you to have a cleaner project. The computer behaves better. It's logic is a lot quicker when you've got less stuff going on there, less processing. But we generally have everything going into, we bus everything generally, and we have a template. We both have a template. We basically the same template we've set up. We generally have around 10 to 12 to 15 buses, and we'll generally bus the drums together, sub or the 808 will have its own bus, and then we'll bus together like high, bass sounds or like any high-end lead sounds. I mean, this track is actually quite simple. It's, there's the DME section has a sub, the kind of trappier halftime section has an 808. Then we have this kind of guitar-y lead that is made up of a number of different elements. One, there's like a synth, not a real girl. I think there's a synth guitar.
There was a few different elements. There was like a synthy kind of sound put into Contact and like resampled and just stretched and like unrecognizable from where it began. There was a real guitar sound, and then there was a kind of a more synth sound to sort of give it the strength and the backbone, so kind of it would stand above everything else nicely. We generally have the same busing structure, but this is like the final project that you're seeing, so it will have probably come down and gone through lots of bouncing down, and probably as much as like 20 buses.
Yeah,
and sends as well. We'll have a few sends here and there.
So yeah, we have all these buses set up, and they all kind of have final processing and everything. We've got limiters on all the buses, and to get our tracks, getting loudness in dance music is all about certain stages. You don't really want on your master, if you've got a limiter, we don't generally have compression on the master. It completely depends on the style though. Some tracks we do a little bit of bus compression. We found that if you've got doing a little bit of limiting in certain stages on all your buses, it's more like a cumulative effect, and you don't have to have anything slamming too hard on your master, because that's when you're going to start losing. I mean, obviously our track's pretty loud. To be competitive in dance, you need to have everything loud, so there's not a lot of dynamics, and I think everyone knows that. But when you've got a limiter that's really doing a lot of gain reduction in the master, that's when you're going to start losing punch. You're going to lose all your transients, going to turn to mush, and it's just going to sound like this kind of messy, undefined, distorted.
It also just means though that you retain control over every aspect of the tune. Like if you need to go in and look at something, you're not going to affect everything else. Like when we sort of first started producing, we were doing a lot more on the master, and if you took the master chain off, it sounded crap in comparison. So it's all about control as well.
Yeah, control, exactly. It means if we feel we're hitting the master a bit hot, we can just pull down all the buses and you keep your levels. It's all control really.
Are you limiting using the Pro L2 mostly, do I see, or use other ones as well?
Yes, Pro L2. I've been getting into this new one by a company called Newfangled Audio, which is some of the programmers from Eventide, who made all the big, harmonizers, the H3000, all these classic big studio things, FX processors. And it's kind of like, it's very complex. I don't really know. Like, it's really, I'm still kind of learning it. It's basically like a multi-band limiter, and it's also got some multi-band transient processing in, and it's got a clipper, and I think it's got a saturator as well. It sounds amazing, and it's very complex, and I've been using it as like a clipper. I think I like to use it on drums because you can do a bit of transient processing, and it's got a really good sounding clipper, which it's just cutting off DVFS. It sounds really cool on drums, but I haven't really started using it on the master yet because I haven't really got into it enough. I'm just too scared it's going to have too much effect. But yeah, this and Pro L2 kind of our limiters of choice. So yeah, we've basically got Pro L2s on every bus. A lot of them are just almost there for kind of safety. They'll be doing maybe just tickling 1 or 2 dBs, taking a few peaks off. What's going to the master is going to be jumping around a bit less. It's just in so many stages of processing, it's just shaving off a few peaks, and you're going to have everything's just a lot more controlled, and you're going to be easy. It's easier to make it loud on the kind of master stage.
Retain all the goodness.
We started out producing, we'd just be doing massive high shells and everything, just because of but then you end up just, if you boost everything, you're just taking away space for everything to sit together nicely. I think that's one of the things we've learned over the years. It's better to, if things are kind of clashing or things are sounding a bit congested, I always err towards trying to take away from sounds and letting other sounds sit in terms of frequency ranges.
Leo just sent me a message and he said, speaking about mixing, would you mind breaking down how you mix your drums? Like if the drums that we had in this session were not mixed at all, what would be the logical process that you would go through?
I mean, we start out, generally we have several layers to the kick and snare, depending on the track. But I mean, the snare especially, you know, you will have a very short layer to give that kind of transient snap, then a body layer, and then something with a release and tail, depending on how long you want the snare to be, with a lot more high end. It's pretty standard. Like everyone kind of approaches this in a quite similar way, kicks and snares. And then in terms of mixing drums, I don't know, like I don't like to do too much. Obviously, you don't want rolling off all the low end in like the hats and the cymbals and the air layers, because you don't, there's no need for it to be there, we find. And we like our drums to sound quite clean. So the main thing I'd say is sample choice. So many of our drums, we're like, you know, when we're like, it's not, we've played it live and, you know, we're like, it's not, something's not right here. Generally, we'll go back and maybe try a different snare, or it always comes down to sample choice.
Especially with drum and bass as well, actually. Like if you're finding that your track is just not sounding right, it's like there's this sort of phrase everyone says, it is like most likely it's your drums, so we'll pay attention to it a lot. And in terms of like, because you know, we've been doing this a while now, so like the snares that we'll use, I mean, they've probably got like about 20 snares, 30 snares.
Wow. Well, no.
It's just like they've evolved over the years, so you've got lots of stuff that we sort of draw for regularly. You know, samples have got so much better recently that you are finding that you're
kind of spoiled for choice, really.
You don't have to do as much as you used to.
But yeah, in terms of processing, we generally sometimes we'll have the kick and snare or just the kick outside of the drum bus. Mostly it's just bussed together and it's just doing some basic EQ, bit of limiting, sometimes just some saturation. There really is no rule. Obviously we play around with the tuning of kicks and snares. Sometimes they'll be the same as in the same key as the track. Other times, sometimes it works, sometimes it's not necessary.
It depends. I find sometimes with the higher snares, because they're a bit more tonal, you can actually hear the tone of them a lot more. You want to find they want to be in tune or part of the harmonic of the chord. It's also about, I mean, there's no point in it being in tune though if that note of the drum isn't the best one for the sound. So I think you want to pay attention to sort of like that if it sounds odd, but I think it really is just a case of just trial and error. Just trial and error.
Yeah. As I says, well, definitely, like if it's one of those like very resonant, kind of more high pitched snares that you hear in like future bass a lot, that will always be, we'll always tune that. And like percussion, congas, cowbells, that kind of perk, that will always be tuned to the track. But kicks and snares, I mean, you know, it's like in like dubstep and drum and bass, if for that heavy dancehall sound, it's common knowledge. You want your kick, you know, kicks, it's good to have your kick hitting the fundamental, hitting around 80 to 100 hertz, snares 180 to 200 hertz. So we'll tune kicks and snares so they're hitting around that frequency. But I wouldn't say there's any kind of hard and fast rules. It's just, I would just always just play around with the tuning of hits, and whatever sounds good, go with it. Because we've been doing tracks recently with snares that are like peaking at like 560 hertz, and that's just, we wanted to go with that sound in the track. But it's just playing around with the tuning, and then suddenly you'll be like, that sounds right with everything. And if it's not in the same key as the track, if it sounds right, it's fine. So I wouldn't say there's any specific rules. It's just playing around and seeing what sounds good and trusting your ears, really.
A while back, you mentioned how you threw something into Contact and stretched it out. I feel like that's a really unique sound design process. Can you show us what that looks like? You don't have to necessarily do it, but just show us what that looks like, because that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we use Contact a lot, where you can manipulate samples. It's got several different algorithms for time stretching. We're always playing around with the speed of stuff that will, without affecting the pitch. I think that's why we always go to Contact as a sampler, just because you can do that. You can slow and speed stuff down without affecting the pitch, which is, you know, a really useful tool. And like the Logic inbuilt sampling EXS, you can't do that. It's just, you're just changing the tuning of it.
So yeah, you've got this is DFD mode is just like standard sampler, where if you tune it down, then the sample gets longer. If you tune it up, it's going to get shorter. And then there's some different Time Machine modes. We'll both switch between like Time Machine 2 and Pro. Pro is probably better for something more like paddy sounds or vocals, where you've got lots of different notes or like lots of harmonics. If you're using more of a bass sound, Time Machine 2 seems to be better, because if you used it in Pro, you get these kind of just top fuzzy artifacts, and it would make the sound a bit more watery. So Time Machine 2 seems to kind of keep a bit more of the power and strength of it. When you're kind of mixing, especially when you're like mixing that with other sounds that you've got, it means that you can kind of line them up together nicely so that they've got a similar kind of like either attack or like decay, a really cool little tool. And then you can layer. I think when we built the lead for the first drop, it was a case of like layering up a few different sounds together in Kontakt and just getting them to sit together.
Yeah, and like recently I've started doing stuff like went through Splice, got some really, some of the best sounding 808s, and I put them all in a Kontakt, and it means you can just audition them in your track. You can change the pitch of them, you can change the length of them individually, and then you can just go through and just try out different ones. Then you can actually layer them up in Kontakt.
Because you can have, like the low end from one, but you might want some of the nice distortion from another one. So it's a really good way of auditioning it. And then, we'll take them out having separate tracks and using the separate tracks and process them separately.
If you get the kind of native instruments complete, you get the most, it's like 80 gigabytes now or something. You just get the most vast library, great string board. There's some really nice new pianos we just got recently that I'm sure we used on the album. Lots of like world instruments, stuff that sometimes, you're not going to use some kind of ethnic percussion in every track, but sometimes it's exactly what you need. And just having that option, knowing that's there is it's a really handy tool.
Because Logic doesn't do quite the same as Ableton, I think Kontakt is adding that sort of element to Logic. You can do in different ways in Ableton. Even when I've used Ableton, sometimes it's just like trying different ways of processing sound, because sometimes Kontakt for some reason won't make a sound. It ruins the sound that Ableton doesn't, and vice versa. Like you got to sort of like try different methods to kind of make stuff work sometimes.
Is there anything that you guys do that you think is almost like technically wrong, but it kind of works for you, or is it all pretty standard what you normally do in terms of like sound design, songwriting, or anything really?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's plenty of things that aren't conventional, like maybe a traditional mix engineer who worked with like, I don't know, jazz or country music would look at how hard we're hitting our master, and I guess the amount of like distortion we use. But I think that's very common throughout electronic music.
Trying to stop myself from using multi-band compression so much, because it can be an instant vibe setter, but it's totally wrong, especially when you get to the latter stages of mixing. It's the worst thing to do.
Well, I wouldn't say, but it's just there's no rule, there's no right or wrong. It's like, if it's working, if it sounds good to you, that's like just, I just don't think there are any rule in making music, especially dance music.
It's just funny though, because you might do some things wrong that you don't think are wrong at the time, but later in the process you see how they've affected, kind of like, obviously because we have to make everything so loud, which requires so much limiting compression at times. You then sometimes have to go back and adjust those things, and that's something we've learned on the way, just what to do early, which will make your life easier later.
Do you measure loudness or get someone else to master your tracks? Or?
We started mastering them.
Yeah, we this last album we did ourselves. We basically, I use a plugin adapter. It's a plugin alliance. It's like a just comparison plugin. So we basically just compare to our own released tracks for levels, and it's got very good metering, and it meters in LUFS. I've started to I look at LUFs now rather than RMS. Basically, in terms of loudness, we just really compare to our own stuff that we're happy with, and that we've had. We've got a good relationship with the mastering engineer, who still cut all our vinyl releases. And having been in a session with him, seeing what he did, it was pretty similar to the kind of stuff we do. And we picked up a couple of techniques from him, and from sending stuff to him and seeing him literally not really do too much to it. This is another thing that's like, traditional music production, the process would be you'd have a track put together by a producer that would be sent on to a mix engineer, who would then give it on to a mastering engineer. But I think dance music producers tend to, the dominant trend is to have kind of your master mastering plugins on your master from the get-go. And so everything is, you can get ideas sounding kind of big and loud quite quickly. And we started doing that, good 5-6 years ago.
I mean, half the sound is in the mix anyway. It's about the energy and the power that you get. So you have to do it as you go.
So if you're writing a track with some plugins, some limiting, some stuff on the master from the start, if you take it off at the end, you're going to lose the sound you've been achieving. And then I don't think then sending it to a mastering engineer with loads of dynamic, which is not what sound you were trying to achieve, you're not going to get the right result. And at the end of the day, I think we know the sound we want to get out of it. We know the sound we're aiming for, and part of that is just the way we process everything and bus everything and send everything to the master, which already has plugins on it from the moment we start making the tune. It's like we know how we want the thing to sound because we're also testing them out every week in clubs. So we get that exposure. We actually write on headphones at the moment. So the fact that we can test everything out weekly in the clubs, it gives us that insight that you maybe would get from going to a mastering engineer with full range, £50,000 PMC monitors. We used to rent a studio in London, which we stopped because it was prohibitively expensive.
These are
the LCD X's, doing the early stages of the tunes in the headphones and then referencing on monitors. And we just quickly noticed that everything started to sound better doing it that way.
It was like a case of circumstance as well. Like I had a home studio. After we kind of moved out of this rented studio, I went back into having like my studio in a second bedroom. And then I sold that apartment to move to LA. And so at that point, we were doing a lot of stuff remotely and on the road. We were actually, I think we had to do a remix fully in a hotel room. From doing that, we just found that we actually really were liking the results and how our tunes were sounding just producing with the Audies. I think it's actually Audizzy, but I've always said Audies, so it is Audizzy. I went down to their factory and I kept saying Audies and they were looking at me with I was with the CEO as well. But yeah, and we were we're making really good decisions mix-wise just using these headphones. We've never looked back. If we had to pick one tool that is invaluable to us, apart from, the things we need like the DAW, it's the Audi's headphones are just absolutely phenomenal. And, they take out all the, to have your room, the room causes so many, it's you're not really hearing the speaker properly if you're in an untreated room, and it's so hard to treat a room effectively and, basically flatten out the frequency response to the room. And working with headphones, especially the quality of the Audi's, you take that completely out of the equation and you're hearing exactly what you're hearing.
And it's also, it's very liberating to know that you can pack your Ds, pack your laptop and go and do this as good a job at producing music wherever you are. Don't do it on a plane because they're open back, but you can literally anywhere else. Yeah, I mean, I've just got an Apollo Twin, so that or these laptop and you can make fully professional music.
Yeah, I mean, we both have the same setup now, Logic, and we use Ableton too, but we both have UAD interfaces, so the same plugins, so we'll work on a track, have everything in a Dropbox, so we can access it constantly. We can literally be working on stuff simultaneously, remotely. We have the same tools, we use the same things. So it means in terms of recall and all that kind of stuff, it means there's nothing holding us up from being super productive.
Because Ben is in LA and I'm in London and we're on different time zones, it is quite cool to sort of, spend the day I'll be working during the day and then, Ben comes online, we'll have a little chat about what's happened and then he can continue sort of working through the night, and with the same setup, literally everything's just uploading to Dropbox immediately. So it's kind of just like you're on the same system.
Yeah, we found through experience this is definitely a very efficient way to work, and it works really well for us.
By Zoom, actually, which we didn't use until...
Yeah, we've been using Zoom and this other thing called Loopback. You're working together through Zoom, exactly like this.
I've been controlling Ben's computer from here in America and writing music. So it's just weird how
it's a bit of a game changer.
We used to do it in a room together on a computer and now we're doing it 10,000 miles away, but together on the same computer and hearing the same stuff. It's been a time save as much as anything because it means that you can really kind of make decisions together in real time. Being able to sort of do that from anywhere in the world, it's made things a lot easier. I mean, I think it's the vocal. We've never really done anything like this before with a vocal where it's kind of, most of our vocals are fairly standardly produced. It's just, there are some effects, I guess, or you can do some weird pitching with it. But I think the track really started from this seed idea. And
there's just some reverb on it, no delay, not much chorus. So it's a fairly kind of just standardly produced vocal. The vocoded layer is very wide as well.
Yes.
And so, I mean, usually we'll add width to a vocal. There's like so many ways to do it. You can have panned layers that you're just slightly pitch shifting off each other. It's like how a harmonizer works. Or we'll actually just have natural doubles, we'll hard pan. But with this, the vocoder was naturally very wide and we wanted to keep all that width. It's also got some quite low mid width, which is not something you always want to have, but it just makes it sound really full and warm. The combination of the two things, for us, it just brought the track alive, and it gives it this like very ethereal, magical quality. And it's the way it's adding harmonies, and this vocal got like a really huge sound in quite a different way. So I think this is our favorite part of the track.
Vocal was actually kind of more traditional, just done with lots of layers.
4 or 5 layers.
But it's like octaves and harmonies and like natural panning. So often with like some of these dance records and stuff like that, you're kind of like, it's just about the pure top line. It's not really about the additions. And then sometimes when you're writing the music afterwards, you sort of start finding that you want like either doubles or sort of other little bits. So sometimes you have to create them artificially using like octaving, just like pitching down, pitching up, and then harmonizing, panning, and creating these artificial doubles, which is like, you know, it's great to be able to do that, but there is no kind of, the best way is to create these natural doubles, create such a big sound.
You've got the lead hook, which is very bright and quite compressed and very upfront, and then the harmony layers, it's like a question answer, but they're wider and a bit softer. They're a little bit more dynamic, so you have this nice interplay between the two things. And I think you kind of get that in a lot of traditional pop production. We employ some different kind of techniques on this track, some which are a bit more unique, and then some which are more kind of standard like pop production. So yeah, it's cool. Like, we're both really proud of how it came together.
Did you have a good time?
Yeah.
It's really nice. I mean, we've been doing press all day, and it's literally the same questions like, how did you come up with the album? Like, how do you feel about, like, you know, how did you start producing? And it's actually really nice, especially for a geek like me, to get really technical and talk about how we made the tracks. We don't actually tend to get that opportunity a lot.
Hey DAW Nation, hope you enjoyed this week's episode of In the DAW with Delta Heavy breaking down their song Take Me Home. Again, if you are interested in the AU5 Ableton Sound Design course, there is a link down in the description. For those who don't know what that is, it is a course featuring AU5 showing us how to make the craziest sounds possible using only Ableton devices. We've had over 1,000 people sign up for it. We are currently just stuffing it full of extra content. We got feedback from the community, from the people who have taken it. We've got a bunch of feedback, and now we're going and recording more videos that are suited to that feedback. So I'd highly encourage you to go check that out. If you really want to know how to do crazy sound design using the most basic effects, beautiful, check it out. Link in the description. Also, if you want to check out the Patreon is awesome, and we're always updating the Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's where we provide exclusive rewards to people that support us. So for example, if you want to donate $1 a month, $5 a month, however many you want, there's a whole tier on top of that. If you want to do that, that's freaking amazing, and we will reward you. You know, we're doing live streams with these interviews. We're working on a private community. We had one on Discord. We didn't really like the platform, so now we're kind of moving it to Facebook groups. So we're working on it. We're trying to do new things all the time to not only, you know, create exclusive content for you, but to create a community. If you want to check out the Patreon to help keep In the DAW and Behind the DAW going, that'd be absolutely awesome. There's a link for the Patreon down in the description. Seriously, only if it's $1 a month. We would absolutely love it. We'll announce your names on the podcast if you sign up for it, so go ahead and check that out. Also, by the way, I just opened up my registry for private lessons again. If you want to take a private lesson, awesome. Link in the description. By the way, if you like this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, repost, follow, you know, whatever is appropriate on the particular platform that you're listening on. If you really like this episode, go ahead and add it to your Instagram story. That's so cool. If you're listening on Spotify, you just hit share and it goes straight to your Instagram story, and there's a little button that pops up that says play on Spotify. It just helps us know that what we're doing is moving in the direction that you need us to, DAW Nation. And finally, I would highly encourage you to check out the last episode of Behind the DAW. That episode was with Holly, who's an absolutely insane, talented, innovative producer. In that episode, we talk about how having faith in a higher power influences your music career, how the price of your new life is your old life, and how Holly doesn't hate anything. It's absolutely intriguing. It's mind-blowing. I'd highly encourage you to check that out. There's a link in the description. You can also just check it out on any podcast app currently that you're listening on. So DAW Nation, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Behind the DAW. And like I mentioned, we don't have any sponsors this week. So thank you so much, DAW Nation, and we'll talk soon.